Honestly, I probably wouldn't have read this one if it wasn't for the author, but I'm glad I did. Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. Like I mentioned in the cold open, this one probably wouldn't have gotten through if I didn't already know the author, and that is Persephone's Vow by Ophelia Silk. This is a Persephone and Hades retelling, which is a touchy subject for me because I tend to dislike most of the Hades and Persephone retellings I read. I'm not a big fan of the kidnapping, but also the kidnapper isn't really a bad guy, and also Demeter is abusive kind of modern retelling. I would have to probably blame Lore Olympus for that, but it seems so everywhere in these retellings, and it gets old fast. So when I saw the way that this author had taken the retelling, I felt a lot better about it. So in this version, we have Persephone living her best life with her mother Demeter, and Zeus, who is her sire, not her father. Basically, Demeter made a deal with Zeus to create the child, but in general, he's decided that she needs a spouse because she needs to be worshipped by mortals, and he thinks a marriage is going to do that for her. She's refused basically everyone he's sent, so he takes drastic measures. He tells Hades that Persephone has basically agreed to this marriage, and Hades sends for her. Now, the mechanics of the underworld at the beginning of this book basically state that once you go through to the underworld, you're done. You're down there. The only person who can really pass through is Hecate. I think that's how you pronounce that name. And so once Persephone is down there, she's trapped. So it doesn't necessarily do the eating the pomegranate scenes, at least at that point. And I like this better because it allowed all three, Hades, Persephone, and Demeter, to be essentially innocent victims caught up in someone else's scheme. And it also did a lot with the world building of the gods. Now, it has them being very godlike, which sounds weird to say, but a lot of modern versions of these old pantheon tales tend to have the gods as basically just being super powerful creatures that technically could be easily understood, but the mortals don't, so the mortals worship them as gods. And in this case, it's like, no, there's divinity there. There's things they don't fully understand that mortals simply can't understand because half the time the gods themselves don't understand themselves. Like how they all came from the same source of creation, but they're not actually siblings as the mortals think they are, which definitely was just an easier way to get around a lot of the ick factor that came with a lot of the incest in the original tales. I'll accept it. I think at this point, every Greek retelling has to come with find a way to make the gods not related to each other subset. But I really like this idea of Persephone is finding her own power. You see that a little bit in modern retellings, but this one is a very big deal in that she's not even really sure at the beginning of the book what she's goddess of. At first, it seems like she's just an extension of her mother, which is part of the reason she's not really getting all that much worship, because like she's just doing an extended version of what someone else is already doing. And this book revolves a lot around her finding what she is actually the goddess of, and it does involve the underworld. I loved that aspect a lot. I also loved how Hades was treated in this one. He is trapped in the underworld, and he is not a edgelord, which is very good. He is not necessarily brooding. He's very gentle. He is very lonely and kind of sad, but it's not an incel version of those things. So it reads a lot nicer. Now, my biggest struggle with the book was you don't get enough of Hades, in my opinion, because the entire book is told through Persephone's point of view. Not my favorite. I'm not the biggest fan of romance books with only one point of view. Because it's just nicer to get to see both halves pining and like what like a rich inner world Hades must have and what deep emotions he must have to finally think he was going to get a forever companion and have it be a lie. Like the heartbreak in that. I would have loved to see that explored more instead of just focusing on Persephone and her goal to get back up to the surface to her mother. She's basically trying to defy the laws of the universe in trying to get out of the underworld where no one else has. But of course, even as Hades is a good guy about it, even as he's like, I know you want to leave, I know we were all tricked into this, I will help you, they start falling in love. But this book did my big pet peeve. It did the big pet peeve, and that is it skipped over the big getting to know each other conversation. It is, I don't know what it is with modern romances, because I talk to other people and they always do this, where they'll have like the characters just meet, and then as they're on the verge of like the first getting to know you, setting up the groundworks for the romance conversation, it gets skipped over. You don't see them talking to each other. The narrative just gives you a vague overview. And it's like, why? That would have been the perfect place. Because at one point, Persephone is basically like, well, I'm only here for a little bit, right? Because she's plotting on how to escape with Hecate's help. And so she's like, okay, you know what? I'll check out, hang out with Hades while I'm here. And they start talking, and he offers to tell her stories from before he was king of the underworld, back when he was on Olympus, because Persephone, as Demeter's daughter, wasn't around for the early days, so only ever heard the stories, so he's like offering to tell her all these cool new stories. Yes, awesome, let's go. You don't actually hear them. It's vaguely referred to in the narrative, and it's like, no, that would have been like perfect. It would have added more depth to Hades to directly see what he went through before he was god of the underworld, and it would give very easy relationship building between the two as you see Persephone reacting and learning more about him. Like, it would have been so good, and it got skipped, and all of his stories got skipped. Like, that's half the fun of doing Greek retellings, is you do the retellings. You get to retell the stories in the way that your universe is set up, because this universe is a little different. Like I said before, there were some changes made for a modern audience that did not actually lose any of the divinity of the gods. And that was my biggest issue. I wanted more from Hades, because he actually wasn't an incel. He was very soft boy, which I expected from this author, specifically because when I read another one of her retellings earlier, and it was MF, it was a genderqueer MF, because like the roles were reversed and both characters were bisexual. So I was kind of expecting more. Like, I was not expecting super heteronormative, even though it was an MF romance, because I know this author. So I liked the dynamic. I just wish there'd been more depth into their conversations. I wish there'd been a lot more in like exactly how their dynamic works with each other, because it's a big deal, because Persephone's dynamics with the underworld plays a big part in her becoming a goddess and what she is goddess of. And like, you can probably guess, but I won't reveal it. And I would like to see more of her dynamic with Hades. There are a couple explicit sex scenes. To be fair, I've been reading a lot of monster romance lately, so they were highly vanilla to me, because just what I've been reading. But they were very cute. The entire story was very cute. There was a part with some very good pining. We love ourselves some pining. I also loved that it did address the Demeter creating winter and how that affected people and what her mindset is. And it didn't just portray her as, look at this evil person creating winter. It did actually show her as a grieving mother who thinks that her daughter has been permanently stolen. She doesn't know that Persephone is falling in love with Hades. She thinks her daughter is in essentially eternal torment. And it even brings up the fact that these are gods. Humans, not every human always matters to them. and I like that aspect, again, keeping them very godlike. So in general, I gave the book 4 stars. Probably one of my more preferred Hades and Persephone retellings, if I'm being honest. I definitely liked the aspects it brought to the story. I liked the way that Hades was portrayed. I just wanted a lot more of him. And in general, I need romance authors to not skip the stories and the big conversations. Okay? It's never going to be as satisfying reading an overview in the narrative. Don't tell me, show me. I want to feel it. If you want the reader to feel it, you gotta show it. But regardless, still a great pick. If you are a big fan of Hades and Persephone retellings, you will probably find a lot of what you love in this. There is still, I won't spoil it, some pomegranate imagery in it in case you were like missing that. And there's also like river Styx and Charon and like all of that kind of stuff. And if you, like me, are usually annoyed by Hades and Persephone retellings, this takes out a lot of what I struggled with before, namely trying to make the kidnapping work, trying to make Demeter abusive, and trying to make the brooding incel the romantic lead. And you know, Zeus as the antagonist is an evergreen classic in Greek retellings. You know, it's really easy to forget that that dude is actually the reason all of the Olympians were saved from the Titans originally, considering what his modern reputation is. It's what you get if you cheat, I guess. Regardless, if you are an indie author and you would like a review, something like this one, you can send me an email. I will have all of that information down in the description below. Please be sure to read through my review policy. It answers a lot of questions and saves us a lot of time. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.